Welcome to the House Blend, your one-stop shop for all things Bay Area real estate. I am Nash, your host. Thank you for joining me. So last week, my team and I were in Fort Collins, attending a ninja installation by a man named Larry Kendall. If you're not familiar with Larry Kendall, he actually wrote the book on ninja selling. Huge advocate of this book and this man. Guy's been in real estate for over 30 years, and he also teaches real estate forecasting at the university in Fort Collins. So because this is a house blend, I also got some coffee from Harbinger, which was actually down the street from Larry's brokerage that he started called The Group. But this is Harbinger coffee. This is the Guatemala Ethiopia blend. It's a nice blend of chocolate, malt, and floral. And I made a fantastic French press today, and I'm drinking it out of a mug that I made myself at the Potter Studio in Berkeley. It's a nice black on black diner. Anyway, so my team and I were out in Fort Collins last week learning from the man himself. I was attending one of his breakout sessions that was all about team building. But what I thought was really cool was he actually went on a tangent talking about real estate forecasting and where he thinks we're at in the real estate cycle. Again, this man has been in real estate for over 30 years. He founded the Group Brokerage, which is a brokerage in Colorado owned by agents. We don't have that in the Bay Area, so I have no problem singing the praises of the group out there. And the man, Larry himself, who wrote the book on ninja installation, which is all about creating value to attract clients, which is one of the biggest reasons that I started this podcast, was to just create value for anybody listening or anybody interested in Bay Area real estate. So we were talking about in this breakout where he thinks we are in the cycle. And one thing that he said that really stood out to me was that real estate cycles are not fast. He said, we are in a high interest rate environment, and a lot of agents that he's talked to are like, oh my God, I can't wait for interest rates to go down because it's going to solve all of our problems. And, the heavens are going to open up, and all of a sudden there's going to be a ton more buyers and way more inventory, and it's going to be great. And yeah, I believe that if and when rates come down, that could happen. The heavens would open up, and I'm going to have more business than I know what to do with. He also said that he's not so sure that rates are going to come down anytime soon. And hearing him say that kind of got me thinking. We've been in a high interest rate environment for coming up on 2 years now. And what happens if rates don't go down as quick as everybody is hoping for? Right now, there's what's called a lock-in effect in the Bay Area, where a lot of people who bought or refinanced through 2020 or 2021 have sub 3, in most cases, a sub 4% interest rate. And what's happening is those people are not eager to sell their house and go purchase another house at a 7% interest rate. But during this installation, there was a survey that took place where there's a lot of pent-up demand. Somewhere in the ballpark of 73% of home buyers want to move on with their lives and don't want the low interest rate to dictate how they're living, where they're living, whether they want to upsize, downsize, get in a better school district, whatever. They're a little more accepting of the fact that they're going to have to give up that interest rate in order to get to where they want to go. So I say all that to say that hearing Larry talk about the real estate cycles and how they're not fast, and how a lot of agents think that we're coming into a time when the business is going to be a lot easier, might not be the case. And he was saying that when I got into real estate, which was 2017, that when interest rates were between 4 and 6%, that was actually a really easy time to be in real estate. And now we're coming into a time with a lot of political changes happening in January. We're getting a new president on a local level, a lot of changes on the in the San Francisco and East Bay political landscape. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with the Bay Area markets out here, as they're often impacted by, the local politics in the area. So what happens if if we turn the corner on 2025 and we're still in a really high rate environment? It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the springtime, especially with more sellers who, like I said, want to move on with their lives. So generally in the springtime, we see a lot of forced appreciation because there's more buyers in the market. It's after the holiday season, it's after the tax season. If you're like me, you're probably just gearing up with your taxes. But um, what can happen is we start to see a lot more inventory come on the market because there's a lot more buyers in the market. And that's where we get those bidding wars that everyone hears about here in the Bay Area. So what I think is interesting is we are still in a high interest rate environment. This week is Thanksgiving, and the market is super quiet right now. So I have this saying where instead of trying to time the market, try to spend time in the market. Where if you get qualified for a mortgage, obviously the interest rate is going to be favorable depending on what product you choose, your credit score, what have you. But there's actually some really great deals that can happen during the holidays. Last December, I closed 4 deals. It's probably the best December I ever had. 2 of them came with seller credits, I think in the ballpark like 20 grand each. And then another client bought a house in Alameda and he didn't have to compete with anybody. So we were able to grind down the price a lot on a property and get a client a great starter home on the East End. So take that advice for what it's worth. There's some really great deals that can happen during the holiday season. And there are also ways that you can position or use high interest rates to work in your advantage. I'm going to drop a link to a blog that I wrote about how to take advantage of high interest rates. Blog was from like 2022 when rates started to go up, but a lot of it is still relevant. So that is just some free added value for anybody listening who does want to take advantage of high interest rates, but thinks that if and when rates come down, it's going to work in your favor. I remember back in 2020, when rates were super low, there was like a whole new slew of challenges that came with trying to take advantage of low interest rates. There was a ton of layoffs going on. Lenders were doing all sorts of employment verifications because new layoffs were happening, every day. But I also remember how difficult it was for a buyer to even get into contract. People were buying houses with no loans. They were paying cash and then refinancing after the fact, which is also a great strategy. But after seeing that, I'm a little skeptical that like a super low interest rate environment is even good for home buyers. So if you're a buyer who's pretty savvy and wants to take advantage of the high rates and don't want to wait for rates to come down, which I don't know when that's going to be, check that out. It's just some added value. I think while we're on the topic of high interest rates too, it's worth taking a look at where interest rates have been in the last 30 years. So if you average out a 30-year fixed mortgage over the last 30 years, the average is about 7%, which is another reason why I'm a little skeptical that they are going to go down as fast as everybody's hoping. Everybody is tracking the Fed interest rate and waiting for that to come down. But what happened was back in September, when the Fed dropped rates by half a point, interest rates actually went up. And the best way to track interest rates is from what's called the 10-year Treasury yield, which as of today is about 4.25%. Generally, fixed mortgages are a point and a half to 2 points above that, which is why we're at about 7%. And there's a lot more factors that impact interest rates, but that's the best, easiest way to track it. And when inflation comes down, which is why the Fed is dropping interest rates, when inflation comes down, we should start to see mortgage interest rates come down as well. So I do believe that over the next 16 to 24 months, we're going to start to see rates decline. Personally, I'm not someone who's going to wait for that to get a good deal on a house. I think there's a lot of great deals happening in the Bay Area and San Francisco right now, while there's not a ton of buyers in the market. So, but I'm excited to see where we go from here because homes are going to appreciate in the Bay Area, usually about 5% a year, which is a huge benefit of owning real estate out here because the home prices are not cheap. And if you can capitalize on 5% appreciation a year on average, it's a great way to build wealth in the Bay Area. Not to say that there aren't other challenges that come with affordability in order to buy a house. Interest rates are high, yes. Insurance is also a challenge that I'm going to talk about on a podcast in the future. But because interest rates are high, it might be good for the market. I don't think we're going to see a market crash. The Bay Area, I've said it before, is categorized by high demand, low inventory, and that's not going to change anytime soon. I was on the CAR website just doing some quick research before this podcast, looking at what they're forecasting for appreciation. And in some cases in California, they're forecasting somewhere in the ballpark of like 10% appreciation next year. There are some areas this year that actually declined in value. Oakland's probably one of them. Not all of Oakland, but a lot of areas in Oakland has been really stagnant. It's been really quiet. I know there's some places in San Francisco, same thing. Condo market dead. I'm not saying that you're going to buy a house and it's going to go up 10% a year, but if you purchase a home, the real estate cycle for a first-time home buyer is generally about 5 to 7 years. If you stay in an investment for that long, you will see some of the rewards of owning real estate. Great appreciation. You'll pay down the principal. Get ready, stay ready, and the perfect opportunity will come along. So, um, this week is also Thanksgiving. I want to say thanks to everybody who's listening, and I really appreciate you guys. Um, Always here, doors always open. Feel free to reach out if you need to chat about anything real estate. And happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, and be safe, be well. Talk to you soon.